Alright guys, welcome to another Roblox scripting tutorial where I'm going to show you how to make a sword from scratch. Now, I did record an entire video, but my audio wasn't working, so I already have everything set up, but don't worry, I will still walk you guys through all the steps. So, you're going to see I have a sword here. So you want to grab any model sword. It can be any sword, it could be a hammer, it can be anything you want it to be. It could be a turtle, and you're holding it by its tail and swinging it. It doesn't matter as long as it's something. So in Roblox, if you want to make any kind of handheld tool, you have to make it a tool. And what I mean by that is in workspace here, click that plus button, type in tool, add that in, add whatever mesh or parts that are included in that weapon into the tool like I did here. Now, another thing before we get started is that you want to make sure you name your meshes or parts and just organize it. But you have to have the handle. A part has to be called handle because that is how Roblox detects what part of the tool your player will be holding. So in my case, my handle is, well, the hilt section. So when you first have your sword ready and you plug it into the starter pack, this is where you can actually put it into the player's backpack. You see, mine's perfectly aligned, but yours will actually not be, and I'll explain here why. The tool part actually has a property called grip, and you need to figure out what position, what orientation works for your tool. So how you can go about figuring out what those are is actually going in-game, pulling out your tool, going into workspace, finding where your player is, finding the tool, and then going into the grip properties and just kind of mess around with it, see, what fits. If you want to rotate it, mess around with orientation. Because this is about what mine looked like when I first made it. But after you rotate it and move it around, you're going to get the result you want. And then just make sure you write down or save these somewhere. And then that way when you stop the game, you can go back in here and just copy down everything else. Now your sword will be rotated and positioned correctly in your hand. Now the next step is to make a swinging animation. Now you can make a very simple one. It does not matter. You can get one from a free pack off of the toolbox. As long as it's a swinging animation or any animation, just have an ID ready. So once you have an ID ready and you've scaled and rotated your tool properly, because yes, that is another thing you can do. In workspace, you can scale it here, and depending on how big it is, will depend on how big it is, well, in your hand. And you can actually adjust the size and scale it correctly by actually using a rig. And you can actually spawn that in by selecting avatar, character, R6 or R15, and hit block avatar. And what that's going to do is it's going to spawn this simple guy right here. And yeah, it's just easier to work with. So scale it properly, and then when you're done, shove it back into the starter pack. All right, so in the sword, you're going to want to insert a local script. Now, I'm going to walk you through what all these mean that way. I mean, you can copy and paste it, but you're not going to learn anything from it, right? So first, I have a variable called sword, which is the actual tool. I have an equipped variable, which I set to false for now, and I'll explain why. I have the player, I got the player's humanoid, and I got something called an animator, which is a part instance located within the humanoid that is responsible for any and all animations that are played by the player. And of course, I have the swing animation and a track, but don't worry about those two just yet. So I'm going to set up 3 events: sword.equipped connect function, sword.unequipped connect function, and last but not least, sword.activated. So what is sword.activated? Basically, that is something that will trigger every time you left click with the tool. And as you can see here, I added an if statement because sometimes it gets a little funny and it'll fire even though the tool's not in your hand. So one way I go around that is that when it's equipped, I set the equipped value to true. When it's not equipped, it's false. Then I check if it's true, and if it is, then it runs any code I need it to. And in my case, I want to run my animation. But to run an animation, first, I made a folder inside of the tool called animations. I spawn in an animation by just typing an animation like so. Get your animation ID, paste it into the animation ID property of the animation. Make sure you name it appropriately, that way it doesn't get confusing later. Then as a variable, make a variable and reference that very animation part, which is this. Then you want to make a track variable. You want to reference the animator and load that animation into it. Now, in the sort of activated, right after the if statement, we're going to play the animation. So every time we left click and the sword is equipped, it will play our animation. Then I've also added the .touched function. And if you remember, the .touched function actually returns the whatever it hit. And in my case, I want to make sure it hit a player or NPC or something that contains a humanoid. So I said if hit.parent find first child humanoid and dbounce equals true. Dbounce is important because if you also remember, the dot touch function will run 1,000 times as it passes through something, and we don't want that because it will absolutely crash the remote event that we're about to set up. So yeah, we set up a dbounce. So we first check and make sure it is an actual humanoid we're hitting. The dbounce is not active. If it is, activate the dbounce, and which is also a cooldown. And then we're gonna fire a remote event, which I made in replicated storage and just called it damage. So game.replicated storage.damage fire server, and I'm passing the parameter of the hit.parent.name, which should be the name of the player or NPC we're hitting. Then it has a cooldown of a second, and it disables the dbounce. So that handles the entirety of the client side of things. Although this isn't the best way to do it, this isn't the most secure way to do it, but it does get the job done, and it helps you kind of understand how tools, begin to work. So now we actually need to deal with the damage on the server side. While you can do damage on the client side, the issue is, you're going to see the damage, but the other person will not, and even if their health is 0, they're not going to die. So we need the server to handle this, and it's more secure that way anyways. So in a server script, I always place mine into server script service, and we're first going to want to lead it with game.replicatedStorage.damage.onServer event. Connect function, it always passes the player parameter, which is who sent the request, which should be whoever swung the sword. And then remember, we passed hit.parent.name, so the second argument is actually going to be hit.parent.name, but here we can give it a completely different name. Just remember what it is, and if you ever forget, just look here. Because remember, first argument is players, second argument is whatever you put in these parentheses. So I always put print hit just to verify it is actually running. Then I set up a variable for the target humanoid, because it should be a humanoid, because otherwise it wouldn't even have fired this event in the first place. So then I'm going to say search workspace, find the target's name, and then find the humanoid. And then I added a print to verify everything, and if that is the case, you're going to subtract the health from 10. Now, another way you can write this actually is, instead of having this long thing, just type in minus equals 10. And it does the same exact thing as that last line did. So one thing you're going to want to look out for, and something I ran into in the previous recording that was lost, is that I have multiple rigs, right? This was initially named just rig. But you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rigs. And the issue with that is I am searching workspace and I am searching for the name, right? So instead of hurting that rig, it was hurting this rig because it's the first one to show up. And if it wasn't going to be that, it's going to be this, then the one I was hitting. So make sure anything you're hitting is going to have a unique name. Players will always have a unique name, but if you have NPCs, just make sure you have some sort of naming system in place if you're going to have them in game. Well, with all that set up, when we go into game, the left click works. Our swinging animation plays wonderfully. If it doesn't, it's likely because it is not your animation, especially if it says asset ID or animation failed to load down here. But otherwise, if it's your animation, it should have no issues running. Now, yes, you can add a cooldown for the swinging if you want to, but I'm not going to be showing that here in this tutorial. So, when I swing, you see it does damage. I got that cooldown, so I can't, even if I spam, it does not matter. I see eventually we killed the NPC. Now, if you guys want to learn more about making a sword, such as parries, like a very simple parry system anyway, abilities, maybe even making NPCs, I can do that too. Whatever you guys are curious in, I will be more than happy to make a video and tutorial on it. So yeah, leave a comment down below if you'd be interested in any of that. And as always, please join the Discord if you have any questions. I will answer to the best of my ability and try to respond as quick as I can. And as always, if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. See you guys then.